My name is Dez, a girl who likes to build. I got the idea to create a YouTube channel while researching how to build a PC. My goal is to provide honest reviews of products that I build and or use in my home. This account is faceless as I have no interest in fame or vanity. However, I would like for that one person who's looking for information which I possess to stumble across the appropriate video to help them on their journey. I hope you find this video to be beneficial and or informative, no matter how big or small. Without further ado, here's my first YouTube video. This is the Apevia Crusader case. I chose this case for no reason other than the aesthetic. I knew that I wanted a pink case. However, I do not consider myself to be the cat ear, bunny tail type of girl. Therefore, I knew that if I went with a pink case, that I would want it to have an aggressive appearance. And I do believe that the black in this case gives it that aggressive touch that I was looking for. With that being said, not everybody will want to pick their case specifically because of the aesthetic. You should also consider whether or not there may be limitations in the case that you choose when it comes to the parts that you want to use in your case. I knew that I wanted a pink case. There was nothing else that I liked. I love this case, so I was okay with whatever box this case might put me in when it comes to compatibility with other parts. For my CPU, I chose the Ryzen 7 3700X, which comes with a Wraith Prism cooler. I picked this first and foremost because it has great reviews. Initially, I was looking at cheaper options, which came with coolers such as the Wraith Stealth cooler. However, when I read the reviews indicated that those fans could not actually keep up with the processor. If I purchased an additional cooler that could keep up with the processor, then I would have had an extra stock cooler lying around, which would have been clutter for me. Additionally, I knew that I wanted an RGB fan, so when I ran the numbers, it definitely looked better to just purchase the Ryzen 7 3700X, which comes with a fan that has RGB. Additionally, that fan could actually keep up with the processor, according to the reviews. For my graphics card, I went with the MSI Ventus XS. I went with a graphics card because my CPU did not come with an integrated graphics card, therefore I needed a dedicated graphics card in order for images to appear on my monitor. Apart from the price, I chose this graphics card because of the ports. I already had monitor cables, and I did not want to purchase a graphics card that would have required me to purchase new cables. My motherboard is an ASRock B550M-HDV. Picking the motherboard was probably the hardest part for me, mainly because there are so many different types of motherboards with so many different types of capabilities and different combinations of capabilities, and I had to figure out which of those capabilities were more important for me. An example of this is Wi-Fi. Did I want a motherboard that had built-in Wi-Fi capabilities? Ultimately, I decided not to because the place where I intended to place my PC is right next to my Wi-Fi router. Therefore, I knew that I could just attach a cable from my PC to my Wi-Fi router, and then I would have internet. Also, if the day comes when I decide that I want to place my router in a different place, I could just buy a Wi-Fi attachment to connect to my PC, and I would still come out cheaper than if I purchased many of these motherboards that have built-in Wi-Fi capabilities. My RAM stick is the Corsair Vengeance Pro RGB. There was an option without RGB. I chose the RGB option because I knew I wanted a RAM stick with RGB on it from day one. The RGB option is more expensive, but in my opinion, it was worth it. Next up is the hard disk drive. I chose the hard disk drive over the solid state drive after going through the pros and cons. One of the cons of the hard disk drive is that it's heavier. That does not mean that it's heavy, but it is heavier than the solid state drive. It is also bigger because of the way it's designed. If you drop this device, it's pretty much over with. However, it is cheaper than the solid state drive. When it comes to the solid state drive, one of the pros is that it is smaller. It does not have some of the same issues as the hard disk drive, but it is more expensive. I also looked at the way that they store memory. They store memory differently. When I took everything into consideration, I decided that the hard disk drive would be better for my first PC build. My power supply is the EVGA Supernova 650GA 80 plus gold. My goal was to acquire an 80 plus gold because that is supposed to be the better standard. Real quick, let's do the unboxing of the Logitech MK120 keyboard. The first thing out is the mouse. Very simple mouse, black, with some gray in there, the brand on there, Logitech. Let's get that keyboard out of there. It's going to take a little bit of maneuvering, but it's coming. To be clear, I did not want an over-the-top keyboard. I saw the different options with lights, wooden keys, metal keys. Some of them were going for over $100. I did not think that I needed that for my first PC build, especially because of what I intend to actually do with my PC. There it is, very simple. Also notice that there are USB connections for both the mouse and the keyboard. This is the interior of the PC case. There's one fan, 2, 3, 4 fans. There are also plenty cables in here, screws, the hard drive pieces. There goes the brand, Apevia Crusader, or Apevia. This is the motherboard. I lifted that pin up so I can attach the CPU to the motherboard. It would have been awesome to have a POV camera here. There it is, the CPU is attached. It's important that the arrow is lined up with the arrow on the motherboard. I had a little bit of difficulty closing that pin because I did not want to apply too much pressure, but I will get it. There it is, I got it. And it is attached. This is the Wraith Prism cooler. There are notches on the sides which must attach to that lip. On that object that we're looking at, there's 2 of them, one for both sides. There is also a pre-applied thermal paste, which is one of the things that I liked about this cooler, but definitely not the deciding factor. Regardless, it assists in keeping the CPU cool. This is what the CPU cooler looks like installed. I also attached the CPU fan cord. One side was already attached to the fan, so I simply had to attach the other end to the motherboard. I next attached the cord for the RGB on my cooler. There are 2 options listed on the instructions, the RGB header option and the USB header option. Honestly, I could not find the RGB header option on my motherboard. It could be that there is no RGB header option on my particular motherboard. I do not know, but I went with the USB connection. One end of the cord is connected to the cooler itself, and the other end of the cord is attached to the USB header on the motherboard like so. I next attached the RAM stick to the appropriate slot. One thing that I found disappointing is that I attempted to order a 2x8 to take advantage of the 2 RAM slots. However, what arrived was a 1x16. I do not know if it was an error on the product description. I did order it through eBay, which could explain that. There's the 1x16 box that arrived. Although it's not the 2x8, it'll do for now. It's still 16 gigabytes after all. After I installed the RAM stick, I attached the motherboard to the interior of the PC case using the screws provided with the system. This is a micro ATX motherboard. The photo attached gives a pretty good visual of the size of the motherboard compared to the rest of the PC case. I did encounter a slight difficulty with screwing in the motherboard, specifically on the side that's closer to the singular fan in this PC case, and that's only because it is a tight fit. Now this was a two-hand job, so unfortunately I was not able to prop my phone up in a way that would allow me to film the installation as I was doing it. I did encounter the same issue with the installation of the VGA card and the power supply. However, I have a more detailed video for both the VGA installation and the power supply installation, which points out things that I think people should really pay attention to if they buy this specific case. The space for the power supply is small in my opinion. It is a really tight fit, so I had to be really strategic. More experienced builders may not have the same perspective. However, I installed the power supply by first connecting the cables to the power supply and sliding the power supply into the space part way. I had to leave empty space so I could pass the free connectors of the cables through the spaces of the PC case that are close to where those connectors would be attached. For example, the mother supply cable went in through this space here to attach to the motherboard. By the way, that motherboard cord really needed to be broken in because it would detach repeatedly due to the crispness of the cord, but eventually I was able to get it to work. Connecting the other cables was not difficult in my opinion. My best advice is to study the instructions. If you do not have a particular connector or header, that likely means that you do not need it. This is what the PC case looks like on the interior with every piece installed. It is missing the tempered glass on the exterior, but that is so I can show you the inside. Ignore the cable management. I like it, it works for me. However, along the way I might find better ways to conceal some of these cables. At the time that I was building this PC, cable management was important to me, but not perfection. So at this point, I just wanted to focus on the VGA card, which by the way, I installed it last because I did not know if it would interfere with any of the cable installation. Clearly it did not, so I technically could have done this before the power supply. One thing to really pay attention to with this VGA card, specifically because of the PC case, when I read the manual, it stated that there are slots on the back that are irreplaceable. So you want to make sure not to remove more slots than necessary. I knew that it would bother me if I removed more than necessary because I would not be able to replace it, and I just know me. Although it is true that this part of the case would be facing the wall, therefore it would not have been visible. The way that I made this work was by one, assuming that I only needed to remove one slot because my VGA card is pretty small. So I removed that one slot, then I took the VGA card and aligned it with the slots and looked from the opposite end to make sure that it matched. There is also a cover on the back that has to be removed in order to expose the ports for the display cables. There are 3 ports. One is for the EVGA, one is for the HDMI, and the other is for the display port. I did it! This is so exciting. I in fact did not do it. Something is not right in this picture. The RAM stick is not lighting up. I noticed something was wrong when I turned on my monitor and noticed that there was no display. I rewatched the videos and saw that the RAM stick was not lighting up, which clued me in that the issue was the RAM stick. So I had to put in a warranty claim and wait for the new stick to arrive. While waiting for my warranty claim to be fulfilled for the RAM stick, I decided to film a close-up of my keyboard. This is a pretty standard keyboard. It's simple. I like it. As I previously stated, I chose not to go with more flashy keyboards. Part of the reason is because of what I actually intend to do with this keyboard, but also this keyboard was only $14, so it was a win for me. My new RAM stick has arrived after putting in a warranty claim for the RAM stick that I purchased through eBay. After going through this experience, I developed a desire to release a more thorough explanation of how I diagnosed the RAM stick. I did go through a process of elimination using the knowledge that I gained from researching the different parts of a PC, so I do want to release a video that explains that, just in case anybody else who watches this video goes through a similar issue. I also want to release a video detailing my experience with customer service. In short, it was great. So I want to talk about that. But again, that will be in future videos because for now, I just want to focus on completing this PC. And it's done. This is the conclusion to my first YouTube video. I hope it was helpful. This was quite an interesting experience for me, from researching and building my own PC to editing a video. I learned so much and hope to learn much more on this journey. I further hope to be able to share my growth through this platform. One way to let me know if this video has been helpful or if you believe it may be helpful to someone else is by liking and or subscribing. You can also comment if you feel comfortable doing so. Thank you for tuning in.